Hello and welcome to Assemblies of the World with me, Anna Isabel, and it is with great pleasure that I introduce my guest today, who is Patricia Bowerman. Hello, Patricia.
Hello, hello. So nice to see you face to face.
Yes, we've had a nice chat on the phone previously because our mutual friend, Mark Byford, said, you need to speak to Patricia. And he said to you, you need to speak to Anna. So here we are. And the reason that Mark was so keen for us to meet is because you have created a video that is very interesting. It's called What's So Bad About Bread? So before we talk about Patricia, it might be good to get a sense of what your background is and how you came to create this video before we talk about the content itself.
Well, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but at 15, I was diagnosed with IBS and ulcerative colitis. I won't go into graphic detail, but it's not nice. And at 55, I was told I was 57 percentile risk for colon cancer. So my colon, my stomach, what I eat has dictated a lot of my life. Now, that diagnosis was 60 years ago, and nobody talked about what's down there. I wasn't told what to do. It was just don't eat before I leave the house, don't eat when I'm out with friends, don't eat certain foods. And that was my journey. So I was always tuned into that, very aware. But we ate a lot of tinned foods and instant things. So when I learned how to make proper sourdough bread about 8 years ago, now the penny started to drop. All bread is not created equal, and it's less equal these days than it was, generations ago. And so now I make traditional sourdough bread that is from wheat that is not sprayed with glyphosate.
Mm.
And then it's sprouted for 24 hours, and that modifies the starch. And then it's stone ground, which is very important. Most flour today is roller milled. And then it's fermented for 3 days, which modifies the gluten. And it's gorgeous.
I want to take you back to when you said that the flower is germinated.
Sprouted.
Oh,
Yeah.
sprouted, sorry. That
Yeah.
the flower is sprouted. So what are you're not actually buying the flour then, you're buying the wheat to sprout. Is that correct?
I buy the flour. So Michael, who taught me how to make this traditional sourdough bread, is celiac. Nearly died as a teenager. He's banging on 80. I think he's 79 now. So he's been making this bread for about 10 years, and he was getting the whole grain wheat in, sprouting it for 24 hours. I mean, he's got one of those brains that just keeps trying things until he nails it. And this is what he found. So the sprouting modifies the starch. So even diabetics can eat this bread and not have an insulin spike.
So tell us what you're actually getting. You're getting the wheat. No, you said you're getting the flour, but the flour is from wheat that's from grain that's been sprouted. Is that correct?
Right, right.
Okay. So that's very interesting because I have made sourdough and yeah, I really love making sourdough. Um, and I also know about the importance of soaking flour um, and the fermenting process. Even when I make cakes, I will do that process. I will do that for just about everything, is just soak the flour. But I'm interested to learn about the other step, which is the actual germination. Um, why is this important? Can you explain that again?
Well, modifying the starch turns it into a complex carbohydrate so that we eat this bread and we don't gain weight. Our body recognizes it differently. And then I use a 50-50 whole grain sprouted stone ground with a white, strong organic, all organic, white, so that it's not horribly dense but you're still getting that natural whole grain goodness and not the heavy white starchy bread that's causing so many problems. And the flavor is extraordinary. I put olive oil on mine. I don't have to put butter and all these things to give it good flavor. It's that natural wheat bread flavor is just outstanding. And people who think they're gluten intolerant, try this, and they say, oh, it just feels good.
So the wheat that you are, the flour from the wheat that you're buying, let's go back to the actual wheat. Is this a traditional strain of wheat, or
it's a heritage
hybrid? So it's a heritage wheat rather than the hybridized wheats, which most people are familiar with.
Yes, it's a heritage wheat.
Okay, so but it is wheat. It's not spelt.
No, it's not. It's wheat.
Okay, and so I guess this is a really interesting conversation because most of us don't really know the difference between the different grains. So what is the difference in terms of gluten content between, say, wheat, rye, and oats?
I don't know. I'd have to look that up. I'm not an expert on the others. I couldn't tell you specifically, but the gluten content. So that's a question I can address, because this 3-day fermentation process means Michael can eat this bread, being celiac, and he's fine. So it modifies the gluten massively. So someone who is maybe not celiac or doesn't have a serious gluten issue, you could ferment it for 2 days. Each additional day enhances that lovely tartness and that chewiness. So I go for a good 2 day, and it's so flexible. If your listeners are thinking, oh, like I have time to bake bread, and I really, yes, you do, because you get your starter going. That will be another conversation. But once you mix your dough, flour, water, and salt, and starter, you put it in a container with a lid, and you pop it in the fridge for 3 days. You're not kneading. You don't have flour all over the place. You watch it rise in that container, because the natural yeast and bacteria are doing what they were designed to do, modifying, munching away, modifying that gluten. And then you take it out and shape it and bake it. Very, very little hands-on time.
It is. Making sourdough, I was so surprised that making sourdough is the easiest bread I ever made. It's not time consuming. I mean, it's like Big Bang, wallop, done. Just because the time is the fermentation, and I think that's the thing. So okay, we've highlighted the fact that gluten actually is not that digestible for many people. And I think actually we were not meant to be eating the high gluten content that we're all eating. And I don't think our ancestors ate that either, because the traditional wheat wasn't as high in gluten as the wheat that is commonly used. Am I right in thinking that?
That may be true. I'm not a wheat grower, but I will say, with the people that I've encountered over the last 8 years who say they're gluten intolerant, I asked them if they'd had a diagnosis. Well, no, it's because all my friends are gluten intolerant, so I must be gluten intolerant because I eat bread and my stomach hurts and I get bloated and gassy. Well, try this bread. Oh, that's nice. Well, first of all, this doesn't have glyphosate in it. So they're probably glyphosate sensitive, because glyphosate is one of the number one contributors to leaky gut.
Okay, so I think this is a good point to address the issue of glyphosate. Exactly what is glyphosate and how is it used?
Oh, I love that question. It's a herbicide. It's a silent molecule. It's the poster child for pesticides and herbicides. I've interviewed Dr. Stephanie Seneff, the author of this book, Toxic Legacy. She's considered to be the world's foremost authority on glyphosate. So I've interviewed her 3 times. I'm going to break it down really simply because that's not a page turner for a lot of people. Our body's front line of defense is glutathione. During the COVID era, glyphosate got talked about because it helps with our immune response. Glyphosate hijacks our glutathione because our body makes glutathione from glycine, cysteine, and glutamate. So glyphosate hijacks that glycine molecule. So now it can influence strongly our immune response. Glutathione is our master antioxidant. It's our master cellular detox and repair like nothing else, working 24/7. So now glyphosate's thinking, oh, well, no, I'm not going to let you respond like you need to and should. And everyone's heard of collagen, I'm sure. The main amino acid in collagen is glycine. And our body makes 28 different types of collagen all over our body, not just for our skin, brain, bones, cartilage, tendons, all that. So that's why glyphosate is so very bad, because of what it's doing just to destroy our bodies from the inside and the way it was designed to heal. So if you can get this bread, make this bread that doesn't have glyphosate, and it's modified the starch, and it's modified the gluten, you're winning on all fronts. And back along, the Roman Egyptian armies of like 60,000 men, they relied largely on wheat. They would grind it and mix it with water if they didn't have a means to bake bread. So wheat is, through history, so powerful. It's not the enemy, it's the glyphosate.
I think that's really interesting because we're now highlighting 2 issues with that related to bread. So it comes back to what's so bad about bread. The video that you have made and the talks that you are giving. And so it's the gluten itself, but then it's also the glyphosate. And I think people are often unaware of the fact that glyphosate is not just used as a herbicide or a pesticide, but it's also used to dry out crops and to make sure that they ripen more quickly. I know that this is done with sweet corn, and I imagine it is done with many other things. Is it also done with wheat?
Wheat gets sprayed more than anything else. So it's sprayed during the planting season to get rid of the weeds. How many times a farmer sprays before harvest? How do we find that out? You have to interview all the farmers. But yes, it is used as a desiccant to dry it out and get it in production faster. But it's before harvest, it's already done the damage. It's drawn up through the roots. It destroys the vitamins, the minerals, the amino acids. So we're eating foods that are less nutrient dense than our grandparents. Tomatoes have about 15% of the lycopene they had a couple decades ago. So we're not getting what we think we're getting when we eat these crops. But interestingly, and I learned this from Dr. Seneff, glyphosate destroys something in the plant called the Shikimate Pathway. That's the cellular communication, that Shikimate Pathway, to give instructions. Oh, it's time to make leaves now. It's time to make flowers. Send the roots down deeper. It's hot out here, whatever. Monsanto, the manufacturer of glyphosate through Roundup, their product Roundup is what we're talking about with glyphosate in it. So, well, humans don't have a Shikimate pathway, so it's not harmful for them. Well, we're already talking about the nutrient depletion. But you know that our bodies are bacteria cells inside and outside, all over, eyes, ears, everywhere. the bacteria cells in our body outnumber our human cells 9-1. We can't see them or feel them or taste them or anything, but that's how many there are. These statistics vary a little bit, but approximately 54% of those good bacteria reside in our GI tract. Those bacteria have a Shikimate pathway. Get
Well,
it?
that's very interesting, because my first thought when you were talking about it in the context of plants is that if we're interfering with that pathway, their ability to adapt to different weather patterns is going to be compromised. So then
Oh,
it's very clear to me that if that pathway is compromised, they are not going to be able to weather the vagaries of our weather. So, drought. They're going to be much more susceptible to drought, etc. They're going to be much more resilient, I think, is what I'm trying to say. And now it turns out, of course, that makes us less resilient too. Um, in many different ways. So, if we consider what the microbiome does in terms of digestion and skin and oral health, etc., that would also mean then, I'm deducing, that our microbiome isn't particularly resistant, which means imbalances are more likely to proliferate with yeasts or viruses or bacteria that are perhaps more aggressive. Would that be a fair deduction?
oh, I think so. I think so, and I think it's been evidenced how plethora of studies I think would need to be done over some time, because testing, well, I went to a conference in Turin last September with Dr. Judy Mikovits and Professor Angus Dalgleish, who might have written one or two books on my shelf, which I've moved now because I was showing it to somebody. This one right here might be of interest to some people.
Okay, the origin of the virus.
Yes. Um, 3 days of eminent researchers and scientists and doctors, and they said we would all test positive for glyphosate in our urine. It's wind runoff. Even a strict organic farmer is not without some influence of it. In the rain, whatever. So we need to just keep it moving, just in and out. It tests in our urine. That's fine. It's being got rid of. We don't want it to get into our cells, so we need to detox deep within our cells 24/7 to eradicate this. But the cocktail effect, because I was listening to a talk yesterday, the safe levels of glyphosate in this and the safe levels of glyphosate in that. Nobody's looking at what we're consuming, that cocktail effect. So I do help people prioritize their shopping. That is one thing we can do. That's where what's on the end of your fork came from. And wheat gets sprayed more than anything else. That's where we need to start. And buying gluten-free bread isn't going to, that's nutrient-free as well. Make what you have on the end of your fork count. And then chickpeas. We all love hummus. Chickpeas get doused with glyphosate. So buy the organic ones. Make your own hummus, or Sainsbury's and Tesco have beautiful organic hummus. Lentils, fiber and protein rich. Look how teeny tiny they are, and they get doused with glyphosate as well. So buy the organic ones. And apples, it's pennies difference. You don't want to think Snow White. We need to know what we're buying, and we need to speak to the produce people. Ask them to get some organic leeks or bananas or whatever it is you want, because they only stock what we buy. So we need to start asking for what we what we want. And then, of course, Mark in the Food Finders Hub, you know, we need to support these things. Like
so I think the issue for a lot of people is a concern over money and the premium prices on organic food. And also, I think that there is a certain amount of trust that is being lost in the organic label on account of things that happen after the harvest. So I think, again, this is where, as you've mentioned, Mark's Food Finders Hub. So this is the Bowler Hat Farmer, the Food Finders Hub. A link to that will be in the description box. Because we are, and within the Community Assembly of the British Isles, we are looking at bringing people, producers together, bringing people who are facilitators of assemblies and helping people to grow their own food, etc. Because we are, of course, conscious of the fact that organic food often does come at a premium. And that's not to say that the premium is unwarranted, because the production of such food is much slower. So farmers often have to wait longer. The wonderful farm in Surrey, Brightly Farm, a Pasture for Life farm that I get food from when I'm in Surrey, this is slow growth, pasture-fed, finished pasture-fed meat. It's not something that happens quickly. And the quality is extraordinary. So we have to remember that food has been artificially kept cheap by virtue of the fact that it's not properly produced. But I'll also say that since eating the highest quality food, I tend to eat less because I'm not as hungry. What do you feel about that?
That there's a chapter in my book called Organic is Too Expensive and I Don't Have Time to Cook, because I hear it all the time. And I say, pay now or pay later. Eat nutrient-dense food and you'll feel better and you'll eat less and you'll save on your shopping. You know, it all goes together. And I have recipes, time-saving recipes for busy people. And when you're eating organic, you can eat the peel as well. That contributes. I mean, we're all paying a price for this cheap, horrible food. And so is the ecosystem.
I think, the issue of time is huge. And although I'm a therapist, because my work touches all areas of life, of people's lives, I do spend a lot of time with people, helping them to organize their day so that they can cook. And I think we think of cooking as something that has to have huge amounts of ingredients and is very complex. But we're not the only generation who's been busy. And with the exception of a brief moment in time when most women were at home, a lot of women had to raise children on their own because they lost their husbands because their husbands had died and they had to work. A lot of women supported their husbands who were out working very long hours in mines, factories, whatever, and also had to have, cottage industry type businesses. Women have always worked. And so consequently, they have always been busy, and they were doing it without labor-saving devices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So our ancestors knew a thing or two about cooking simply and nutritionally rich, delicious foods. And I think there's something that there's this huge misconception, I think, brought on by TV chefs that cooking has to be complex and difficult, when actually, if I take an entire chicken, put it into a pot, and add some bay, salt, and onion and whatever else I want to throw into the pot without much chopping. I put it into the oven for a slow cook. That takes me, it's literally about 10 minutes to prepare. I put it into the oven and I leave it. And I leave it for however many hours I choose to on a very low oven. And then I have more than one meal. And I also have broth that I can turn into soup. And that takes me perhaps another 10 minutes as I add more herbs or vegetables in and then use a blender. Really, I don't have time for complex food, and most women and most men don't.
Well, that's true. And in that chapter in my book, I recommend, well, so my air fryer, I have an air fryer with 3 mesh shelves. It's not the one with the little drawers. Everything is cooked in there. I don't have to worry about burning it because it's got a timer. And 3 shelves, I can put so much in there. But also a soup kettle. Somebody gave it to me because she didn't know what to do with it. I'd never heard of them. But when you get a sweet potato and a red pepper and an onion and whatever else you want, some garlic, cover it with water, and you press go. You can go bathe the kids, do homework, whatever you need to, have a shower, come back 25 minutes, you've got soup. And you don't have to fine chop. You just enough that it'll, oh my gosh, I love that thing.
Yeah, I hear you, because my slow cooker gets more use than anything else in my kitchen, apart from my yogurt maker. And again, you see, what we're talking about is foods that cook themselves. We put it in and they cook themselves.
You don't have to stand there and stir.
No, it's very, very simple. And I think what is different about cooking like this is that it's not instant and it requires planning. So it's not about time, it's about planning.
I have a comment for that.
Yeah, so tell us about that.
Our digestive system starts getting involved when we're thinking of going to Sainsbury's, and we start making a list of what we're going to get when we're there. And then when we pick up those tomatoes and that red pepper and we put them in the basket, we're barely thinking about it. But our body is like, ooh, the anticipation. And then we start chopping. Now you can smell it as well as see it. And that's getting more digestive juices and things along the way involved. And then you're laying the table or you're asking the kids to do that. And then you sit down to eat. Now your body's receptive to that food. So that's a long process, but that's a healthy process. And it's not time wasted. And for people who drink smoothies 2 meals a day, I say, chew your smoothie. Don't, we just want to put food in our mouth and swallow and go on. But we've got to chew our food. That gets those digestive juices going, which are so important. And I was speaking to somebody who had a couple of smoothies a day. She'd have her main meal in the evening, and she looked like 8 months pregnant. She'd blow up because her digestive system was forgetting, you don't need me. It's like a muscle. We have to use it. So I wish they taught this stuff in school, but it's not that difficult. And I've done a lot of the head scratching, investigation, trying it out myself to get past my own health issues. And so it's time well spent, and it's not massive.
We haven't even touched on the role of smell in all of this, the anticipation and the preparation for digestion, because we do need to prime our digestive systems. Now that begins in the mouth, but before it gets to the mouth, we're already producing saliva when we smell it. And when we were anticipating it, I mean, everybody will have the experience of looking forward to something that they're going to order in a restaurant, and they're already anticipating it, and feeling the saliva coming into their mouths. We use the expression, it's mouth watering.
Yes, yes,
It's mouth watering. We want everything to be mouth watering because of the fact that water in our mouths, our saliva, is part of the digestive process, and this is why, you know, people had hors d'oeuvres in the past, and bitters, because bitters would stimulate the digestion, the digestion. So we start off talking about wheat and bread, and we've widened the discussion to the importance of slow food, which is slow in the way that it's cooked and not prepared, and therefore it's not our time. It's, you know, I mean, I love first thing in the morning, starting something off, taking maybe 5-10 minutes before I've even done anything else, putting it into a slow cooker, or if I'm somewhere where I haven't got one, big stock pot into the oven, and just leaving it for the day, and it's ready at dinner time. That's brilliant. I love doing that. So we've widened it to the importance, because it'll always of that slow process that actually cooks the food, which comes back to sourdough again, because this is slow bread. It's not slow bread in that you're taking huge amounts of time to prepare it. It's only slow because there is a natural fermentation process, in the same way that if I'm making yogurt or kefir, it takes me 5 minutes. The prep takes me 5 minutes. But then everything else is nature allowing it to ferment. Same with sauerkraut, everything that is slow. So I hope that everybody who is listening is inspired to find your video. I'll put a link to it in the description box. You also have a book that you have just finished.
And it was, I don't know, it came to be because I was saying all these things to people. And it's too much information for people to take in. I talk about hydration and so many other things, and it's just too much. So I just put it all together in a book. Each chapter stands alone: foraging, fermenting, sourdough, a little education about glyphosate versus organic, some gardening tips in case you're using Roundup in your garden, some safe alternatives, salt and vinegar, nettles. Oh my gosh, nettles to eat, nettles to use in gardening. So my hope is people will find one chapter that's of interest and find, like, okay, well, I could do one thing and make those changes and do it for your children, the things they're having to deal with now. But also the sourdough bread thing. So you've got your discard, which probably most of your readers or listeners know, sourdough discard. You can make sourdough cake that's good for you. So tasty. Sourdough crumpets, sourdough crackers, sourdough pancakes. With all that leftovers, it is just so good. Food can be fun again, and you'll feel good again. I mean, you already do, but your listeners, you can feel good again.
You can feel good again, and I think also there is a spiritual connection to this here, because what we are doing is we are reconnecting with nature, and that is good for the soul. I think it's really good for the soul. It's empowering because we're taking power back into the choices that we make about how we live and what we eat. So that's also empowering. And
that's where our power is. You know, if you know, because some people think, well, somebody actually said to me one time, well, Mr. Sainsbury's wouldn't sell anything that wasn't good for me. I mean, we have to know what's what. And that first step is what's on the end of your fork. Well, you're the one who buys it. You're the one who prepares it. You're the one who puts it on there. So know what it is. Know what it is.
One last question, Patricia, and this is about confidence. How, for somebody who has no confidence in their abilities in the kitchen, what would you say?
Well, I was that. We learn from our mistakes. We learn very little when we do something right the first time. We get a little pumped up, and then the next time we go to do it, we might not get the same results. So don't beat yourself up. Don't think you're a failure. Try. The learning is in the trying, and you'll get better and better and better. I was baking doorstops before I met Michael. And he does teach classes. So we're in the Southwest. He's in Somerset. He does travel to do classes. So that's one way. He's setting up his website to be able to teach online. And the flour that I use can be ordered. Sue Bailey, I can give you her details, and she ships it. She's here in England. And, but, you know, more and more and more, there are good quality flours available, but they're not right under your nose. And you can't, I have to ring the mills and ask them, do you have organic, whole grain, sprouted, blah, 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 blah. And now white flour has folic acid added to it in an attempt to prevent maybe 200 spina bifida births a year in the UK. I won't say what I was going to say because it might be too controversial. But if you're eating whole grain bread, you get the natural folate. You don't need the synthetic stuff. Why don't they just ban glyphosate and tell people to eat whole grain sourdough bread?
Well, there's a thought. Patricia, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. The video that we are talking about is called What's So Bad About Bread? And I'll be putting a link to that in the description box. Now, Patricia's book is not out yet, and I think we'll have to have you back when it is to find out more about it. But in the meantime, do check out her video and be inspired. I'll put some other good links for flour, etc. in there. And in addition, if you are not already a member of the Community Assembly of the British Isles, make this the day when you join. The link is also in the description box. Until next time, goodbye.